Looks like it.
It looks like it. We are live, coming to you live from Coraville and Colorado,
Yeah.
somewhere. Let me just double check on the actual thingy here. Da, 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 da. It's slow going this morning. I mean, actually, the morning has been very fast paced, but this is why I feel like I'm moving very slowly because things are happening quicker than I can catch up to. But that's all good. That's the name of the game today. Okay, there we go. It's live. If you're here, let me know. I'll try and catch the comments here while I multitask. But welcome. This is a new series in Midwest Elevation Conversations to Raise the Collective Conscious, which is our whole purpose for Midwest Elevation and why we're here. Today we are here with John Rhodes, spiritual guide. We are here to talk about the awakening the heart, which is an ideal and not just a program, though I did go through the program of the same name. So there's a lot in there, as I posted last week. I signed up to do the course with you because I was like, corona, anxiety, and you know it helped with that immensely, but it was so much more. And we're just gonna, you know, graze the tip of the iceberg here today, I think. If you don't already know John Rhodes, he's a spiritual guide. He has a Facebook group called the Dynamics of Ascension, releasing obstacles to freedom. So freedom is something, personal freedom and autonomy and sovereignty is something you care deeply about. This is a space you might want to be in. I won't read the whole bio there, but just knowing that John's work is coming from the perspective of the heart center and divine loving presence, and how moving along life on this perspective really allows you to transform your life in ways that you never thought possible, and continue to. So there we are. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you and I can pop up here and not look at pictures and words. Um, so there we go. Hi, welcome.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
It is. It's a glorious day. You know, here in Iowa today, it was 58 degrees when I woke up this morning.
Oh, goodness. A little
Yeah,
chilly
a little chilly,
for
but
August in Iowa.
I know, I know. But it's gorgeous now. So I will definitely take advantage of the fresh air later today.
Yeah.
But I thought we would just talk about a few things about the work that you do, but I don't know if there's anything that, as far as something you want to make sure that folks know about what it means to live from a heart-centered space. Maybe we'll start there.
Sure. Um, well, the kind of the kind of the thing that comes up to me is just about what you mentioned is like what's been going on in the world. There's coronavirus, there's social protesting, there's a huge number of things happening in our experience that can, and our experience of those events are all having the potential to create a large amount of anxiety, of fear, uncertainty. Um, and as I'm sure you may have experienced, or anyone who's watching has experienced, and especially on our social media platforms, um, huge amounts um, of conflict are the potential of what's going on. Not to mention just sitting around the dinner table with your family or extended family, talking about politics or what have you.
Hey, conflict.
And, everything that we're seeing going on from this perspective is a process of the expression of our ego consciousness. And because of the way that the ego is built, and because of the way that we relate to that structure of consciousness, those experiences of fear, of conflict, of all of the sort of things around like oppression, suppression, control, loss of control, all these types of things are going to be a part of that experience. And the thing that is really beautiful about heart-centered perception is that it is a structure of consciousness that is not subject to the extremes of polarity or duality. It's a consciousness that exists outside of the framework that says it's either this way or that way. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm taller, you're shorter. All of those kinds of ways of looking at the world. Heart-centered perception may see those realities, but doesn't evaluate them based on this black or white way of seeing things. And when you're fully perceiving from this center of consciousness, you're able to choose to say, okay, I see the hot, I see the cold, and I'm going to accept where I am in relationship to it and create a space that I can harmoniously interact with everything that's around me. So that's really, for me, that's really why why discovering and practicing and engaging with this structure or this layer of consciousness is really important, because of everything that's happening right now and being able to find harmony amongst all of this chaos. It's kind of like the one thing that can bring some relief, bring a sense of maybe grounded certainty into our lives. It's where it's at.
Yeah, no, that's really beautiful. And the thing that I love how you expressed the fact that, dualities exist. Like, we're not arguing the fact that they don't exist. We live in, a dualistic society. We live in a dualistic reality here.
Yeah.
You can't, we're not denying it, but you can look at it and come from a less judgmental perspective, right? Or a perspective, something you talk about a lot is neutrality, where you are not attaching yourself to either side, and so that, and maybe it's somewhere along the continuum, as you mentioned, but there isn't an attachment to it that sort of, makes you out of control, or there, it does offer a centeredness, at least, inwardly, that you can come back to. Because, at least what I've been experiencing is that, even though I'm doing this work and I'm seeing this perspective more fully, there's still like the push and pull of the experience. So it's not that suddenly everything is roses and lovely, sunshine and rainbows, but that even when it's not, there's there's a deeper sense that it's okay that I don't have to go down the rabbit hole and take everything I know and feel with me. I can I can go down the rabbit hole maybe with a telescope or you know, some kind of something where I can see down there
Uh-huh.
and take a look. But I don't have to fall without, having anything to sort of um, get back up again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, one of the one of the ways that our experience of ourselves and the world develops is through a process of self-identification. And
Yeah.
that is a lifelong process that we're engaged in that does not it's not conducive to creating a state of neutrality. We go through our young experience going through school, and one of the first ways that we begin to identify with judgments that are outside of ourselves is like, well, how well are you doing in school? Are you an A student? Are you a B student? Are you a C student? Maybe you're a D student. Maybe you're a dropout student. And we begin this process of self-identification with these aspects of self that really have nothing to do with who we truly are.
Yes.
And as that process can, now it becomes, well, now I'm a college student, and then you get out of school and it's like, well, okay, I'm a gas station attendant. I'm whatever your career choices are, now that's your identity. And people go
Mm.
on to do that within their relationships. Oh, I'm married. Oh, I'm a single someone. I'm, all of these ways of self-identifying encourage us to have strong opinions about who we are and what we are. And within a world of duality, there's always going to be the other side of a coin of that identification, which says
Right.
like,
You can't get rid of it.
yeah. and and depending on how we create our own identities, we're going to come in contact with the conflicting experience to what we believe we are.
Mm.
So if we believe that we are a high powered, bound for CEO, professional in the world, we, depending on how we process our energies and how we create our experience, it's likely that we're going to come across some obstacles that are going to push back against that identity structure. And when our ego believes it's necessary to survive with the identifications that we have, rather than adapting to the situations, we're going to either forcefully push for our belief structures so that we
Mhm.
can support the identity that we think we must create in order to survive, or that creation is going to get destroyed because the powers outside of us are bigger, stronger, or harder than we can handle. And we will then have the unpleasant experience of kind of getting squished under the pressure, cracking
Yeah.
under the pressure.
Yes. Well, and I think, I guess I can only speak to myself personally or at the moment, but for a lot of people, especially parents with kids and dealing with going back to school, I mean, this is like it's a huge thing.
Mhm,
And then myself as a teacher, like,
mhm.
who's in control of deciding what's safe for me? Right
Yeah.
now, I'm not in control of who gets to decide who gets to decide what's safe for me.
Right.
I have choice in, you know, there, but none of the choices feel like, none of the choices are easy.
Right.
That's, and across the board, and for parents, for, anybody in the world who is, dealing with how do you, how do you continue to, how do you continue to move through this experience? What do you hold on to? And that's the identities, right? Are you going to hold on to the identity of being a teacher because that's super important to me, or am
Hmm.
I going to have to shift, not just my profession but my identity, which no, not necessarily, but but that's an example, right?
Yeah.
Like but even, within the constructs of not having a career change, having to rethink how we do school, rethink how we do communities, where our priorities are, who's
Yeah.
most important, me personally, my family, the larger microcosm of my community, on and
Yeah.
on and on. It's this ripple effect, which is, things that we talk about with the collective conscious, right? It's not that I myself can go in and like change what everybody else is thinking and doing. That's not possible.
Right.
So the only thing I can control is, in here. And what identities am I attaching to? What pieces of, you know, the identities need to be tweaked or let go of or surrendered to. Um, and then,
Yeah. I mean, you're you're like sharing perfectly this like internal, the internal decisions that have to happen on, depending on a person's process. But, it's like everybody has to survive, everybody has to make money, everybody has bills to pay. If you have kids, you have to figure out how are you going to not only keep your kids safe, but help them become the people that they need to become,
right.
and whether that's homeschooling or sending them away to school. And like, um, right now there's so many situations going on where, you mentioned like, um, the choices from outside of you that are being offered, like not any of them seem to be ideal or ones that you can say, oh yeah, that's a good choice, let's do that.
Right.
um, and and that's really, um, that process for the collective is going on at a large scale, and from my perspective is going to it's going to continue in one form or another, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a political situation, whether it's a social situation. The pressure to release the identities that aren't really serving you, the pressure to connect with some form of inner truth that allows you to begin to create your own reality through your own perspective of the truth. That pressure is going to continue to increase as long as any individual is identifying with aspects of reality that are not true to themselves.
Mm.
So so if it's like, um let's take for instance, um all the different states have different guidelines around staying safe in around the pandemic. Some states were like, right off the bat, we're like, we're going to ask everybody to wear masks and do social distancing, blah blah blah. And then when those guidelines kind of like relaxed for some states, um, you know, people then begin to see like, oh, I can kind of decide how I want to be in this situation. In fact, I always had the option of deciding how I want to be in this situation.
Right.
Like I get to decide if I want to go to the grocery store without a mask. Now I might get to the grocery store, like some of those videos about, you know, customers in at Costco in Colorado. I might get to that store and find out that there are consequences to my choices that have to do with the right of the private business to set their own guidelines on their own property.
Right.
You know, and some people are saying like it's kind of like this thing going on around censoring on Facebook, and people are like, you're violating my free speech rights. And it's like, no, actually, um, Facebook is not it's not a public forum. It is not funded by the public.
Right.
So they can censor it as much as they want. You know,
Yeah.
so if you say stuff that gets censored, your rights aren't being violated. In order to exercise your rights, you just may need to go out into the real public square and say your piece, you
Yeah.
know. And if you get suppressed doing that, okay, now we have a real conversation about that.
Right. Right.
But these things are happening in relationship to how the choices we're making, we want to engage with. And as long as we are experiencing conflict and engaging with our choices in a way that is not fulfilling our heart's desire, we know, or you can realize, that you are probably self identifying with something that is not really true for who you really are. Meaning, at
Mm.
the very deep center of your heart space, the innocence of the true being that you are probably engaging in some activity, some decision, some identification that is in conflict with that inner innocence. And it is being reflected to you by your outer experience.
Right.
So, you know, how do the question is, how do we find a way to express ourselves in harmony with that inner innocence that's free from conflict?
Mm.
How do you discover that inner innocence?
Right.
How do you
Where is
even know how to find it? You know,
right?
and for most people, that process is through contrast.
Mm. To see what the
to
opposite
to
is. To know.
yes, to
Yeah.
yes, exactly, to say, I don't like this. I don't like the fact that I have to wear a mask wherever I go. I don't like the fact that, you know, some people say this pandemic is like really dangerous and everybody needs to be really careful, and some people are saying that it's not a big deal and we should just let our you know, focus on our economy and you know, go back to the way things were. You know, like, how do I know what's true?
Yeah. Probably somewhere in the middle, but
Well,
what's true for one person is, not true for another.
y- yes,
And
we are seeing the sort of like this movable truth as evidenced in, I mean, before 2016, the idea of a conspiracy theory was pretty far out there. And what is a conspiracy theory? It's essentially a perspective about the truth that is outside the realm of the collective accepted reality.
Mm.
And now,
Outside the realm of the collective accepted reality. Okay. Just
yeah,
what?
yeah, I mean, if if there's sort of like a narrative that most people accept as the way things are,
Right. Yes.
when you're outside of that,
Yeah. And
you
that
know,
causes some, yeah.
and and now everybody is familiar with this idea of fake news. Well, what the heck is that? And even our news outlets, which in the past most people used to watch the news and accept it as an objective view of what's happening. Now,
Yeah.
if you watch the news, you are actively engaging in a particular and biased perspective of reality, regardless of what you're choosing.
Right. Regardless of which news you're watching.
Yeah, whether it's Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or NPR, you know,
Yes.
depending on which one you're choosing, some of those will claim to have less bias than others.
Right. Right. Which in
But
and of
like,
itself is a bias.
yes, exactly. So, I mean, we're all here kind of creating our own truth. And once that collective narrative kind of goes out the window, what do you do?
Right. Right. What a,
And from my perspective, finding that innocence of the self is imperative because we have to find our own we have to find our own relationship to the reality that is happening, our own creative relationship. However, you brought that up. You can't go out there and change the fact that your state is creating rules about the school system that you have a job in, that you're going to be a teacher in.
right.
You can't change that just by snapping your fingers.
No.
So what's your creative relationship and where does that come from?
Mm.
You know, are are we going to be stuck operating from a place of like, okay, well, I'm a perpetual victim trying to survive this situation?
Right. Which is the last thing I personally want to be.
I
Sorry.
mean, I think most people would agree
Right. It
that
doesn't feel
nobody
good.
it does not feel good to be in that situation. So how can we find a way, how can we find a creative solution that fulfills the desires of that fulfills your needs as an individual? I saw a great post the other day on Facebook that was like, it's time for teachers to eat. And what they mean is it's time for teachers to become like their own their their own like um their own entrepreneur, their own solution to the problem of children need to be taught lessons, to become like each teacher becomes their own private school and has
Yeah.
10 students, right?
Sounds
that
great.
that they teach together online or whatever and do their own thing. And it just, obviously there's a lot of hurdles from that's
Right.
that's an idea that's got potentially a lot of problems, and there's lots of things that would have to be
Right. Right.
uh, worked out. But
But
the
there already
idea,
is a lot of things that need to be worked out.
yes, I mean, no matter any way you look, there's going to be obstacles.
Mm.
and that's that suggestion was from this perspective of like this sort of total free for all where everybody is their own authority.
Yeah.
And you know what will that do to society? I don't know, but
Right.
it's
What does that look
changing in
like?
that way already anyways.
Right, right. So yeah, is it gonna turn into a, what is it, Lord of the Flies, or is it gonna turn into like, you know,
The Big Brother in 1984,
yeah,
like,
right, right,
right,
right. Which, for
where
me and
everybody's being tracked. Who did you touch today? You know?
well, and that's like, that's I mean, that's the duality of the fear of what this can turn into, or the hope
Yes.
of what this can turn into. And for me, I that's like, I almost think of like, a pinball machine, right? Like that's where I've been oscillating now for months, well, my whole life, but for months,
Right.
right? It's like, you know, we want to prevent, you know, the dystopian cruel society, but we want to create the loving utopia of,
Yes.
and so, what it takes to get there, and how do you, like, um oh, I forgot my thought, but like it'll come back. um but that's the thing, like, and then that's of course the difference between fear and love, right? And if we boil every decision and every identity down to fear and love,
Mm,
right? Anger generally comes from fear, sadness comes from fear, joy comes
right.
from love, compassion comes from love, so
Right.
it's like, um getting to that place where, well, and I guess you said it at the beginning too, where you can observe from a different, a higher perspective, an elevated perspective, that, these things that are scary exist, but that I don't have to be scared.
Yeah, I mean, you said you started awakening the heart because, you know, um the way that our experience was shifting, you know, the pandemic starting, schools closing down, um, you know, experiencing anxiety in response to that reality. You know, I'm I, I I'm curious to hear as just like when you think about a solution to that situation, like oftentimes, most people are going to relate to it as like, well, how do I keep myself safe? You know, how do we get the information that we need in order to stay safe? And I'm curious to hear if that is the same solution that you found by going through awakening the heart, and what the
No,
difference is.
no,
If it's not.
it's not. Well, and the key, right? And I think I knew this going into it, which is why I was
Mm,
open to the journey,
yeah.
is that the key is that you can't get there. You, the question is, how do I stay centered and hopeful and loving in within the chaos, right? The
Mm,
eye of the storm. I want to stay, the storm is moving all around me, and I want to stay here in the middle.
right.
Obviously, there's, a lot of that is based on fear, because I want
Right.
to be safe, and it's safer in the eye of the storm, but it also
Right.
feels better in the eye of the storm, and it's less damaging in the eye of the storm. So I'm not
Right.
denying the existence of, you know, the crap that's out there. There's conflict. And it touches me. I'm not, I'm
Yeah.
it's but there are no guarantees. And this is something I've been learning for years, whether through like the books
Sure.
I read, classes I take, the cognitive behavior therapy that I've worked on for years and years and years. right? There are no guarantees. Nobody can
Right.
tell you 100% that you are going to be safe. And so
Right.
you have to get to a point where you can surrender to the knowledge that there isn't the guarantee, or surrender to the fact that despite whatever is going to happen that you can and can't control, and in most cases you can't, that at your core, you know, it's okay.
Right.
You are safe, you are loved, you are, you know, all these things that, you know, our inner child needs to hear, or, you know, whatever it is, however you want to say it, right? And where that comes from, and is like, in so many ways, a matter of faith and surrender. And um you know, and for me, you know, the power from, you know, an energetic source. And again, you know, a million different terms you could use, but um but that faith that it's okay. Like, you know, I don't know, where was I going?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many parts that you brought up to it, and the first one, tying it back into what we kind of started off with, the ego first and foremost will attempt to control the circumstances that are going on outside of us.
Right.
So 2020 is the year of total extremes. I mean, if you haven't been playing 2020 bingo, you know, you're missing out on a great opportunity for, you know, when is the do you have zombie apocalypse on your bingo card? You have, did you the killer hornets that, you know, never really kind of um, uh, arrived? My favorite one is there were some feral pigs that got into a stash of cocaine and ate all of it. And so the coke pigs that like went, they totally went crazy.
You
Anyways,
just said
but
coke.
yeah, I mean, come on, it's 2020 bingo. What are you gonna have on your card? The cocaine pigs, the coke
Oh
pigs.
gosh.
So so we're in a year of extremes, and normally up until now life hasn't been necessarily this extreme. Now some people have been living experiences that are this extreme, but
Right.
because they were individuals going through it on their own, maybe it didn't look the same way either to them or anyone else.
Sure.
But now that we're in a situation, no one's ego is in a situation where you can be under the illusion that you can control what's going on outside of you. Maybe when it was limited to your own individual drama, your
Yeah.
ego could engage in this process of saying, if I can only control this I. But now we're in this collective experience where nobody can be under the illusion that they can control it. Now some people are doing a few like bypass things in relationship to it where it's like, you know, this is a hoax, I can't get sick,
Right.
you know, it's not real, blah blah blah. That's a, you know, whatever it is people are doing, that's fine, you know, like we're all processing this craziness. But when you're saying being in the eye of the storm, what you're saying is creating from your own self of inner creation a sense of peace and calm, regardless of the chaos that exists around you. And in order to do that, we have to have access, you said, an energy source.
Yeah.
Now um, I suspect what you're referring to is a divine source of consciousness that you recognize as all humanity coming from, right? Now, some people may relate to that, some people may not. Some people may have a relationship to that through religion. Some people may have some other form of experiencing it. But from the perspective of awakening the heart, whether you relate to it as a divine source or not, the source of that creative power comes from inside oneself. And understanding where that exists within your own energy system and understanding how to access it by being able to tap into it and know it, knowing what it is, to be able to feel it and generate an experience with it at any given moment, or having tools that will allow you to tap into that space, to know that space, to experience that space, can change your reality and your experience of it. And as every single person creates that calm in the center of the storm, if you imagine 330 million Americans creating a calm in the middle of this storm, pretty much there's not very much storm anymore.
Yeah.
It's mostly a lot of calm and peace and
Yep.
centered potential for creating that loving utopia that we all, every single person, has at the center of their heart in some way or another, regardless of how it's expressed into the world.
Right. Right.
And so the more that we can access that, the more that we can connect with it, the more real that we can make it in our experience, the more we are actually influencing the chaos that's going. What's crazy is that the more that we tap into our own individual creation and create it in the fashion that is fulfilling for our own heart's desire, the more we are actually transforming the collective reality.
Right.
The more that you resonate with your inner self, the greater impact you are going to have on the collective energy. The more time you spend in that peace, the more time you spend in creating love rather than conflict, the more that energetic effect is going to ripple out and diffuse the chaos that exists. Now, as part of that process, yes, are we going to experience contrast, conflict? Like you said, it's not like all of a sudden you just live in a bed of roses and there's unicorns and rainbows everywhere you look. No, you're still going to look around and you're still going to see a lot of nastiness.
Right.
You're still going to see a lot of chaos. But the question is, can you be a witness of that and maintain your sense of self the way you want to be?
Right. Yes.
That's the perspective of an awakened heart. Not to be fully enlightened and perfect and like the spiritual, just in this golden bubble that nothing touches you.
But that's where I want to be.
That's, yeah. Well,
oh, wait. No, that's where my ego wants to be, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's where the ego wants to be. That aspect of, the heart center connects it, from my perspective, to a deeper aspect of the soul. And the soul is here to be a part of the experience of contrast.
Right.
So from this expanded perspective, that contrast is actually desirable. And the more extreme, kind of the better. Because the more extreme gives you more potential to feel who you are and feel your own response, your own truth. If you see something and it gives you the feeling of, this is not right, that's giving you the experience of what is right. You are feeling the vibration inside you powerfully of the world that you resonate in,
Mm.
of the world that you want to create. That is a huge, this is your pathway. It says, this reality is not right for me. I want to create going this way instead.
Yeah.
It's giving you the roadmap of how to create that peace and calm and world around you, regardless of what is happening in the chaos.
Right.
And as you take the sometimes what appears to your ego, the minuscule steps in the direction of that reality, you're actually creating giant waves of energy that are going out into the world and creating the potential for the utopia or the full expression of the reality that your response was built upon.
Mm.
And in that way, you bring your own truth to the reality that everyone else experiences. You know, when we look at those few human beings throughout history that we look at and we say that human being changed history, how did that person do that? Did they control all of the
Yeah.
things?
No. No.
They found a way to express their own truth
Yeah.
that allowed that truth to expand beyond them and resonated. It happened to resonate with the collective. Other people saw their truth and said, my truth is the same.
Yeah.
Now I have the courage to take the minuscule steps in the direction of that truth. And as each individual takes those minuscule steps, it becomes a massive movement, a massive wave of consciousness expanding into the world. So here we are in this moment where each of us has an opportunity to change history, to change our reality.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, it's gotten pretty messed up, huh?
Well, and that's what I was thinking about, this the gratitude, right? Not only can we be grateful for the beauty, but we have to be grateful for the lessons and the light that the dark stuff shows us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's not easy to have an appreciation for that
No, it's not.
because because that reflective mirror of reality, when we see that darkness, whether it's showing an aspect of our own darkness or it's showing us an aspect of our relationship with that darkness, the pain that we experienced around the events of our life that caused our own individual suffering. It's hard to be with that.
Yeah. But it's important.
And when you're willing to make the space
Mm.
with your heart to witness without judgment your own experience, your own pain, your own suffering, or the pain of another, the suffering of another, without judgment. And when you make that space, it allows you to transform those experiences and become something new. Most people have been conditioned, we've all been taught that the events of the past shape who we are. And oftentimes the pain and suffering that we experience become badges of honor.
Mm.
It becomes a um, something that we have to learn from in order to control our future by not by closing off our experience to certain possibilities,
The boundaries.
the boundaries. And when we do that, we've limited the opportunity that we have to create a life in harmony with our innocence, to create a life in harmony that truly fulfills us. And in order to make space for that, we have to be really willing to look at those experiences of identity, those experiences of suffering, and be willing to let go of them.
Mm. Yes.
I have a kitty who's come over to share his 2 cents.
Oh man, we've talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Not a lot of stuff.
It's really easy to get wrapped up in the current events.
It is, but it's but it's what we're all sort of dealing with right now, um, and it's very personal,
Yeah.
and so of course we have to do this inner work.
Yeah, I mean, we can avoid doing it, but it's only going to make the reality more, the storm will only get darker and wilder and more chaotic the more we resist the process that's happening for us.
Hmm.
All of this, it's strange to say, but all of this, the the social chaos, the pandemic, you name it, the 2020 bingo card,
Yeah.
it's all happening for us to
Yes.
expand.
Yes.
It's all providing for us an opportunity to become a greater version of who we've believed that we have always been.
I absolutely agree and believe that. Yesterday, actually, here in Midwest Elevation, I had posted that quote about, um, the caterpillar thinking this was death right before becoming a butterfly.
Yeah.
And and then ironically, or not ironically, of course it makes total sense. I watched I've been watching this series, and uh, the the woman was talking about the alchemy process, um, but relating it to a caterpillar and a butterfly, and then relating it to exactly what's happening right now since 2016, which you just mentioned, and which process we're in. And it's the same sort of thing. Like, we are becoming that goo.
Yeah.
Or maybe we're just passing the goo stage. We are, our cells, our ideals, our identities all have to reconfigure. We have to reconfigure to become what's next. And if
Yeah.
we don't reconfigure,
Yeah. It's just going to get harder.
it's just going to get harder. So, well, I appreciate you so much for being here and for all the continued work that you know you do and that we all do collectively, and um, if anybody has questions, if you're watching the replay or whatever, just comment, tag me. We'll respond. But this is like, I don't know. I feel like we're just beginning.
I could probably talk about awakening the heart for hours on end, because there's, as you know, there's so many elements to learn about our inner selves, and so many ways to engage with it.
Yeah.
Well, I go ahead.
I was going to say, it was a 10-week program, but it's not a 10-week program. It's like a life. It's like a lifetime. But because the tools, like they're real, actual tools to use to be like, okay, here's how I see this. Here's how I can figure out what's really true. Here's how I can, release things. Here's how I can, and I just it keeps going. And
It's true. I mean, when I first discovered the process, I personally fell into the enlightenment trap, where you experience a shift in your own reality, your own perception of yourself and of what's happening around you. And I immediately self-identified with all of those things. And of course, reality saw fit to, my reality came up in a way that I had to continue the process of of uh, of exploration and development, and of releasing those aspects of identity that are not resonant with who I truly am. And it's a never-ending process, and one that's so important. And just as kind of a, an idea that has been coming up a lot for me lately is that, from this perspective, as each of us is going through our own individual transformations, whether you're in a caterpillar stage, whether you're dissolving into goo, or you're already a butterfly, that tendency of the ego to desire to assist others along their own path of transformation is leading so many people into a process of judgment of the stage of transformation that others are in.
Yes.
Because once you awaken to your own true nature, you begin to see other people who aren't.
Right.
And there's a huge opportunity to diminish the self-identification that other people are expressing. Mm-hmm. And in order to continue the process of awakening, of evolving, the most powerful and fastest way to remain on that path of self-evolution is to be a witness of others without judgment, to accept their stage of transformation as perfect where they are, and to find a way of being in harmony with them.
Right.
Right. And that gets really hard when people trigger you and get under your skin and all of that. But so I just I believe that is the reason why so many of the spiritual teachers in the past, they focus so much on kindness.
Yeah.
As a unifying principle. Mm-hmm. And simple though it is, it can be really challenging.
Yes. To have compassion for the people who Yeah.
Yeah, huh?
No,
Compassion
just
for your
right,
enemy.
fair enough.
At least your ego's enemy, anyways.
Right, right. It's true. It's true.
Well, and so thank you for having me. I really appreciate you sharing this conversation with
Absolutely.
everyone in Midwest Elevation. Um, I hope I'm saying that right.
You are. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. Indeed. Indeed. Yeah, so the replay will be here in the group. I did realize probably about 40 minutes into it that I forgot to start recording. So the last bit is recorded officially cuz I've been posting them on YouTube too. But well, such is life.
I mean,
So if anybody wants to hear it, you gotta, invite all your friends into the group so they can watch, have a conversation.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's all good. All right, well, and maybe we'll return if people have more questions and comments and things. We'll have another conversation in the coming months. But I am
Yeah,
continuing to do these. I think Tuesday's the day. I will have one on Thursday in like 2 weeks. Super excited about that one.
awesome.
Rock is going to be here. Yeah, and we're going to have a chat about all stuff that's cool. And and yeah, so this makes my heart happy to do, and hopefully everybody else out there as well can find some joy and some hope in the midst of this chaos. So
Well, thanks so much for having me. I I want to send uh, to you especially my um, super proud of all of the incredible progress and development that you have created in your life and in the world. Just as this group is evidence of that coming in more and more into reality. It's really cool to see all of that happening. And I just want to send um, love to you and everyone in the group. And I would love to have more conversations anytime. Just let me know.
awesome. That's
So,
great. Well, thank you so
all
much.
right.
Appreciated. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Thanks.
All right. Goodbye,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.